afraid of the dark.
In 6th grade, a new boy was assigned to sit next to me in school. By the end of the school year, we were inseparable, but after graduation, life led our paths to different cities. Back then, we were carefree kids, and it never occurred to me why my friend's dad was so gray at such a young age. I only knew he worked in medicine, and I didn't pay much attention to that fact until years later, when we met at a high school reunion party we hadn't had for 7 long years, and we started talking, and I learned a horrifying story. It turns out, Robert's dad was a forensic pathologist. If I remember correctly, that's what it's called. Basically, he investigated the causes of death of his patients. Robert remembers only one fact from his childhood when his dad left for an urgent call in the evening as a regular dad and returned with a white head. When the boy asked his father about the gray hairs, his dad said it was necessary, that people could sometimes age due to hard work. The boy noticed that his father became silent and gloomy. His mother always tried to speak to him quietly and calmly. Only when he became an adult, and after his mother had a stroke, did his mother tell him what happened that night when his hair turned gray. He was urgently called to work. Neighbors were worried that a young woman had disappeared for a week after a quarrel with her husband, who left with a suitcase and never returned. The apartment was silent. They broke down the door and found the girl's body. The cause of death had to be determined. In general, Robert's father started his direct duties. He autopsied the body, began his work, when suddenly a muffled groan escaped from the victim's mouth, and then she opened her eyes and grabbed Robert's father's hand. From the unexpectedness and unreality of what was happening, the man simply lost consciousness. As it turned out later, due to severe stress, the girl fell into a lethargic sleep. She had no pulse or heartbeat. Her skin was pale. In general, all the signs of death were evident. In haste, the medics recorded the death and handed the body over for examination. Robert's father, with all the conclusions drawn, began his work. The girl woke up during the autopsy. Fortunately, she was saved, but Robert's father, along with the gray hair, acquired a sick heart at the age of 34, visited many psychologists and therapists, and never again engaged in forensic examination, transferring to a regular clinic as a regular therapist. Perhaps after numerous silhouettes and monsters, this story may seem trivial to you, but imagining the whole nightmare of what happened, I truly feel scared. In the summertime, I often stay at my dacha, and next to mine there's a plot owned by some old lady, kind of eccentric, but not wild. She sits on a bench in front of her house all day long, muttering something under her breath, so softly you can barely make out the words. Once, as I walked past her, I noticed she seemed to be petting someone sitting on her lap. I thought it must be a cat. On closer inspection, though, there was no one there. She simply held her hands over her knees as if she were holding something and stroked the air with one hand. I figured she must have had a cat once and she got used to it. So when she's lost in thought, her hand instinctively makes those petting motions, as if a cat were sitting on her lap. Then one night, while I was sleeping at the dacha, something strange happened. I woke up to find a furry object lying next to me under the covers. Still half asleep, I assumed it was my cat, so I absent-mindedly stroked it. But the fur felt too coarse. Suddenly, I remembered I was at the dacha and my cat was back in the city. I woke up immediately but didn't move, quickly devising a plan. I decided to cover whatever it was with a blanket and toss it out the window. But as soon as I made my first move, the thing jumped off the bed and dashed towards the door. I caught a glimpse of its silhouette out of the corner of my eye, and there was something strange about its movement. I leaped out of bed, reached the door, saw it was slightly ajar, and relaxed, thinking I had just forgotten to lock it and some cat had wandered in, or maybe a neighbor's dog. I returned, passed by the window, and suddenly saw the face of the old lady from the neighboring plot. I'd never seen her like that before. Her gray hair was loose, blowing in the wind, her eyes were huge, and she was staring right at me. I was so frightened I jumped back from the window and she leapt back onto her plot in huge strides. I couldn't calm down for a long time, but eventually I fell asleep. As I was drifting off, it occurred to me how odd the fleeing cat or dog, whatever it was, had moved, not like it was running, but like it was rolling along the floor towards the door. The next morning I woke up, went for water, passed by the old lady's plot, and there she was, as usual, sitting on the bench, muttering to herself, neat and quiet, as always. I thought I must have dreamed the whole thing, her running around like a mad woman at night. But as I approached, I heard her speaking distinctly and, as always, stroking something invisible on her lap. "Why did you make me run after you last night, huh? Why did you sneak into the guy's place at night, scaring him like that?" I trembled, barely able to contain myself from running away. Later I tried to find out more about this old lady. Nobody really knows much except that she spent 10 years in a mental hospital. Since her release, she's been sitting on her bench in front of her house all day long. Then one day there was a holiday, and I was having a drink with a guy from the village, and he told me that 15 years ago, this old lady had chopped off her grandfather's head with an axe. When the police arrived, she was sitting on that very bench in front of her house, smiling, holding her grandfather's severed head in her lap, petting it and talking to it. I want to tell you a story. It happened to my acquaintance. His name was John. Once we were sitting together in the park, chatting away. Time flew by unnoticed, and it was time for me to leave, but John clearly didn't want to let me go. Suddenly, he began to hurriedly tell me, "Listen, have you ever felt like you're being watched?" "No," I said, "I but I feel it constantly. I live alone at home now ever since Lola left. Well, one day I was sitting at home watching TV, and suddenly I realized that someone was watching me, intently without looking away. I got goosebumps, turned around, and there was no one behind me, just an empty room. But as soon as I turned away, it happened again. Another time. About 5 days ago, I was sitting at the computer and accidentally glanced at the cat lying on the bed next to me. And the cat had huge eyes like saucers, and it kept staring at the door non-stop. Well, I got a little scared, threw him out of the room and closed the door. And then, when I finished, I went out and the cat was gone. I searched the whole apartment, but he seemed to have disappeared into thin air. Well, you should, John, move out of the apartment if such stuff is happening, I told him. "Yeah, I know, I'm moving out tomorrow already. I've packed all my things, just need to get through one last night, but I'm really scared. "Why's that?" "Well, just the day before yesterday, after taking a bath, I came out and suddenly realized that it was standing right behind me." I got chills down my spine. I ran into the room, slammed the door shut, and immediately understood that if I had hesitated for even a second, it would have walked into the room right after me. I don't know why, but this thing doesn't come into my room. I turned on the night light and sat by it until morning, not sleeping at all. And then last night I woke up suddenly and heard someone in the kitchen. Definitely someone was there. I left the room, went slowly to the kitchen, and there was something devilish. A shadow in the middle of the kitchen and scraping from the fridge, as if someone was scratching it with their claws. I got scared, backed away, and ran back into the room. In the morning, I went to the kitchen, and there were grooves all over the fridge, as if someone had tried to open it with a corkscrew. You know, I'm afraid to stay there tonight. I don't know. Do you want to stay at my place tonight? I asked. No, if I stay, I won't go back to the apartment anymore, but my things are there. I think I'll spend the night there somehow. Well, all right. As you wish. Okay, I'll go. Good luck to you. Call me in the morning. Okay, as soon as I wake up. That was our last conversation. I woke up in the morning, but the phone never rang. Later, I noticed the answering machine light flashing. Someone had called during the night. I turned it on, checked the number, John's number, and on the tape, there were screams, rustling, scratching, nothing discernible. In the evening, I received a call from the police asking me to come to the station. It turned out that John had jumped out of the window and died during the night. Now I only sleep with the lights on.